All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here talking about real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. So the story of how Randy Meisner basically got forced out of the Eagles due to really crappy working conditions. Don Felder, by the way, talks about this in his book. I've done a number of videos about, the fights and the disagreements and how Don Henley wants to keep the fights private and in-house. Apparently, it got so violent at one point, a police officer was there trying to break things up and was basically told to go pound sand while we all work this out because we're a family. That's why they were taking separate limos and they weren't doing the stuff they used to do together. And, bands typically do this. But back in the 70s, there was a lot more camaraderie than today, where everybody takes their limo or their private jet and they meet at the venue and they rehearse for a little while. And, I guess with all the technology, maybe they're leaning heavily on that. But I found this story and it was kind of interesting because it says, Meisner struggled with ill health and exhaustion due to the band's constant touring that lasted more than 11 months. This, of course, is during the Hotel California period. On top of his tiredness, the band members wanted the musician to do something completely opposite to his personality. Even though he preferred not to be the center of attention, he was forced to perform Take It to the Limit on stage. Now, I don't know if Randy didn't want to perform that song. I don't think he liked all the attention. And, maybe he could sing this off to the side, put the spotlight on someone else, or don't have a spotlight. I'm sure there was a workaround that you could probably apply to this situation if you wanted to keep Randy happy. Now, of course, the band has a different story as to what happened. Randy says here, I was always kind of shy. They wanted me to stand in the middle of the stage and sing Take It to the Limit, but I like to be out of the spotlight. One night in Knoxville, I stayed up late and got the flu. Now, here's where the story gets a little bit conflicted. We did 2 or 3 encores and Glenn wanted another one. I told him I couldn't do it and we got into a spat. That was the end. I really felt like I was a member of the group, but not a part of it. Now, this was a constant theme. Bernie Leadon, Don Felder, Randy Meisner, these guys were all casualties of what you might call a difficult working environment, right? And the partying, the drugs, the women couldn't have been good for one's health, night after night. This was, the rock and roll lifestyle. These guys were burning it at both ends. This is why when Ted Nugent gives a talk, he always says, hey, I didn't do this stuff. And that's why, look at him at 73 years old. He is, he's got the energy of a guy less than half his age, and he's still able to think clearly. In fact, he thinks more clearly than most people in this business at his age. Now, Meisner apparently had trouble hitting these high notes. We've documented that before. It's a really difficult song to sing. About the incident, though, Don Henley had a completely different take. And I don't know where the truth is. I imagine it's probably somewhere in the middle. We were backstage and the crowd was going wild. Our encore number was Take It to the Limit. People love that song. They went crazy when Randy hit those high notes, but Randy didn't want to do the song that night. This is what Henley says. He'd been up partying all night with a couple of girls and a bottle of vodka. Now, when Don Henley talks about being up and partying all night and saying it in a way that is trying to make Meisner look bad, that's the old pot calling the kettle black thing. We won't get into, Henley's antics, both when, he was just partying all the time with the band. And then, toward the end, when the band was on the outs, he was still finding himself in difficult situations, like, law enforcement showing up at his house because there were some underage girls present, and again, I'm not necessarily throwing stones at Don Henley here. I'm just, it's just kind of weird that they're going to out Randy Meisner as a party animal. Of all the people in the band, he looked least likely to party. Maybe Bernie Leadon was the other guy prior to that, who was probably the second least likely guy to party, but I don't know. Apparently this dates back to almost the beginning of the band's history. So he'd been up partying all night with a couple of girls and a bottle of vodka. Glenn kept trying to talk him into it, and Randy kept saying no. After about the third or fourth time that Randy refused, Glenn just backed up a couple of steps and said, "Well, F you then." And then Glenn Frey continues to tell the story. There were police officers standing backstage, and when they saw us about to go at it, they started to move in. Henley turned right to the cops and said, "Stay out of this. This is personal and it's private, real effing private." So it's good that Don Henley was able to stop the police from breaking up a fight, which could have ended up in serious injury, right? It was good. Because we know that, there was, I think, a bottle of beer that was poured on Glenn Frey's head, as I recall, and that was done by Bernie Leadon. It's not too violent, but it certainly could instigate some problems. I mean, this is a band that was always on the verge of breaking up, according to Don Felder. The musician, talking about Randy Meisner, decided to leave the band after the tour's final date on September 3rd, 1977, which marked his last performance with the Eagles. He returned to Nebraska to be with his family while the band replaced Meisner with Timothy B. Schmidt. The rocker officially quit the band in September 1977, citing the reason as exhaustion. Now, it's just interesting, though, that the Eagles, Frey and Henley have to kind of make sure that people know, hey, we're just trying to get him to do his job. He refused to do his job. And, we started yelling and screaming at him, because that's always a good way to get someone to do what you don't want them to do. And like I said, maybe you put them in a corner. Maybe you figure a workaround here. Maybe you do a different song that night and say, we understand because we partied the prior night, Randy, even if they're going to, if you're going to use that story, right, that he was up all night partying. I'm sure there were nights where Joe Walsh probably couldn't even get out of bed, right? Maybe he stumbled to the stage, but he doesn't have to sing Take It to the Limit. So in any event, it's interesting to kind of go back in history and see Randy didn't look back. He just, I'm done, see you later, gone, no problem. Bernie Leadon, same thing, I'm done. Did they leave a very lucrative enterprise? Yeah. I mean, Bernie wanted to do a completely different style, and he was butting heads. Bernie was kind of like the George Harrison of the Eagles. He had some good ideas and wanted to present them, and the other guys were like, no, you're doing that crazy bluegrass stuff. We don't want that anymore. They wanted it at the beginning. They wanted a real authentic country rock band. But as time went on, they wanted to be Led Zeppelin. And no offense to the Eagles, but they were never going to be Led Zeppelin or any of the other real hard rocking outfits from the 1970s. They were a good band the way they were, but some would argue, again, look at the success of Hotel California when they kind of changed direction and became more of a hard rock band, which isn't really that true, other than Life in the Fast Lane. And Victim of Love, maybe, is kind of a rocker. But the rest of it is adult contemporary music. The Last Resort, Wasted Time, The New Kid in Town, seriously. Hotel is still kind of I don't know, it's kind of a middle of the road, could be adult contemporary, could just be standard rock, but everyone was playing that because it was accessible. And that's what made the Eagles good. They were accessible. And all radio formats in those days could play the Eagles. Nowadays, you know, no rock station would touch the Eagles because they're just not rocking enough, which is stupid, but it's just the way things are today, folks. Anyway, I always felt bad for Randy Meisner because he's really a good guy. Certainly was abusing certain substances. I think even after he left the Eagles. Last time I saw a picture of Randy Meisner, it was pretty bad. He just did not look good. So in any event, let's just hope Randy's going to be around for a while longer, and maybe someday the Eagles will honor him at a concert. I know they've got Vince Gill singing Take It to the Limit now. It's a difficult song to sing, and Vince does a nice job with it, but guess what? He doesn't go near the range that Randy had in his heyday, and I don't know of any singer around that could sound like Randy and hit those notes the way that Randy hit those notes. I mean, those were just like dog whistle notes. Those are way up there. So in any event, the history of the Eagles, the abbreviated version, of course, you can watch that documentary, which is still out there. And I think someone someday, when maybe people aren't around anymore, I hate to say it like that, should do more of a balanced look at the Eagles, because I think it would be beneficial. The same would be true of the band Chicago. I think you need a more balanced view and not the remaining band members who are trying to promote themselves and promote a tour. You need sort of an independent look at the Eagles, and then Chicago, and maybe some other bands out there. The Beach Boys would be a good one. There are a number of bands that maybe we don't have all the facts on, and the people who are on the inside who watched it, who weren't biased, could probably give us a better look at what was going on. In any event, thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, Patreon for $1 a month. Want to thank all the patrons. We're in a new month, so each time at the beginning of the month, I have to tip my hat to all the patrons who have supported this channel. I need your support more than ever at this time of year, because the revenue stream tends to dry up because of the lack of advertising. And, you know, we've got an election season coming up where you'll have midterm elections and the advertisements will go up, and certain other factors, including the holidays. There are no holidays in sight. You know, Easter is coming up, St. Patrick's Day, but those aren't, typically those aren't heavily promoted. There's not a lot of products other than, you know, Lucky Charms and maybe Easter eggs, whatever. I don't know. So thanks for watching, and I will see you all soon.